Rewind the clock to the summer of 2022. Erling Haaland is standing at a crossroads, and instead of putting pen to paper at the Etihad, he walks straight into the Bernabéu tunnel wearing white. Manchester City never gets their generational number 9. Real Madrid does. Now follow the chain reaction that one signature sets off. A prime Karim Benzema doesn't retire into memory. He spends 2 more seasons mentoring a 21-year-old wrecking ball who finishes everything he creates. Vinícius stops cutting inside to force a shot because there's suddenly a giant camped in the 6-yard box demanding the final ball. And 250 miles north, Pep Guardiola is left rebuilding an entire attacking philosophy around a hole nobody in Manchester can fill. None of this actually happened, but football history has a way of hinging on decisions this small, and this is exactly the kind of decision that could have rewritten everything, trophy by trophy, record by record. Would he already have 2 or 3 Ballon d'Ors sitting on his shelf? Does City's historic treble even happen without him leading the line? And does this version of Haaland end up remembered as the greatest pure goal scorer the sport has ever seen, wearing a badge nobody saw coming? Before we get into it, drop your prediction below. How many goals does this version of Haaland score in his debut Madrid season? And hit subscribe, because once you see how this rebuild plays out, you'll never think about this rivalry the same way again. Here's what actually went down that summer. Haaland was the most sought-after striker on the planet, coming off a scoring spree at Dortmund that broke records left and right, and virtually every elite club in Europe was chasing him. City won that race comfortably. Real Madrid, meanwhile, had just lifted the Champions League with an attack built on fluid movement rather than one fixed target man. Let's set the scene properly. It's early June, and while the real world is watching Manchester City tie up the final paperwork on their new number 9, this version of events is playing out very differently behind closed doors in Madrid. Florentino Perez has spent weeks on the phone with Mino Raiola, Haaland's agent at the time, and instead of treating the deal as a long shot, the club has decided to go all in. No hesitation, no waiting for a cleaner opportunity down the line. The negotiations themselves would have been anything but simple. Dortmund's release clause sat just above 60 million euros, a number that looks almost laughable now, given what strikers of his caliber command today. But even with that figure locked in, Real Madrid would have needed to restructure a chunk of their wage bill just to fit Haaland's camp's financial demands. Demands that were already pushing the boundaries of what even Europe's biggest clubs were comfortable paying a 21-year-old. Tisiki Begiristain finds out Real Madrid has entered the race late, and suddenly, a deal that felt like a formality turns into a bidding war against the one club in the world with the financial muscle and the prestige to actually win it. City doesn't fold easily, but it's not enough. Haaland's decision comes down to something money alone couldn't buy: the pull of playing under the brightest lights in the sport, at the club he idolized as a kid. And then comes the unveiling. Picture the scene. Fans in white shirts chanting his name before he's even kicked a ball for the club. Across Manchester, the mood is the exact opposite. Pep Guardiola holds his own press conference days later, and he's asked directly what this means for City's plans going forward. He gives the usual composed answer, something about respecting the player's decision and moving forward with the squad they have. But anyone who's watched Guardiola long enough can read between the lines. This wasn't part of the plan. Pre-season tells you almost everything you need to know about how this partnership is going to work. Carlo Ancelotti doesn't throw Haaland straight into the deep end. Instead, he builds the early friendlies around a simple idea and let the 21-year-old do what he does best: get on the end of everything. Within the first few weeks, you can already see the shape of it. Vinícius stretching the width, and Haaland just standing in the space nobody wants to give up, waiting to punish the smallest mistake. The opening months of the league season go about as well as anyone in Madrid could have hoped. There are growing pains. He misses a handful of chances early on that a more experienced Madrid forward might have buried, and the Spanish press doesn't hold back about it, questioning whether his Bundesliga numbers would translate to a league built on tighter defending and less space. But by match day 8 or 9, the questions start disappearing. He scores in 4 straight matches. What makes this version of the partnership so dangerous isn't just the goals, it's the chemistry that builds between him and Benzema almost immediately. Benzema, already established as one of the smartest forwards of his generation, seems to know exactly where Haaland wants the ball before he even receives it himself. There's a specific type of pass Benzema starts perfecting that season, a disguised through ball played with the outside of his foot, and Haaland starts timing his runs to meet it on a dime. Commentators start calling it the old master and the young apprentice, and by December, That partnership alone accounts for close to half of Madrid's goals in La Liga. Champions League nights bring a different kind of test. European defenses sit deeper, mark tighter, and dare Madrid to break them down patiently. It's in these games where Haaland's physical advantage becomes almost unfair. Centre-backs, who've spent years handling technical, movement-based forwards, suddenly find themselves up against someone who simply overpowers them in the air and outruns them in behind. By the group stage's final matchday, he's already the competition's top scorer. Has Real Madrid just found the final piece they didn't know they were missing? His first instinct is to fall back on what worked before, rotating false nines, trusting Julian Alvarez to lead the line in a more fluid setup. And for a stretch, it actually holds up. City still grinds out results the way they always have, built on control of the ball and defensive discipline rather than one dominant scorer. But cup competitions have a way of exposing exactly what a squad is missing, and City's Champions League run stalls earlier than anyone at the club expected. Against a well-organized defense that sits deep and clogs the box, Guardiola admits in a post-match interview that the squad lacks a certain unpredictability up front. Careful with his words, but unmistakable in his meaning. And by January, they're already scouting replacements, chasing a different kind of striker to fill a gap that one signing could have closed months earlier. Meanwhile, back in Madrid, the benefit of landing Haaland reaches far beyond the goals column. His arrival forces the entire club to rethink its long-term planning. Youth academy prospects who play as strikers suddenly have a new standard to chase in training, a physical and mental blueprint the coaching staff points to constantly. On the pitch, his hold-up play gives Ancelotti a tactical option he simply didn't have before, a genuine target man he can lean on in matches where Madrid need to slow the game down and win individual battles rather than pass their way through pressure. It's not just goals. Before we move to the next section, if you're a Real Madrid fan, drop a white heart in the comments. If you're a City fan, we still want to hear from you too. Tell us honestly, would you have fought to keep him or let him walk? By his second season, Haaland isn't adjusting anymore. He's dictating terms. He breaks Cristiano Ronaldo's single-season La Liga scoring record before March. Benzema, now in a more supporting role as his own legs start to slow, openly credits Haaland's movement for extending his own career, telling reporters that playing off a striker this dominant has made the game easier for him, not harder. Barcelona, still rebuilding their finances and their squad identity around Pedri, Gavi, and a teenage Lamine Yamal, suddenly find themselves facing a Madrid side with a nearly unstoppable focal point up front. El Clasico matches shift in tone almost overnight. Where these fixtures used to be decided by moments of individual brilliance from wide players cutting inside, they now become physical, attritional battles. The effect on Barcelona extends past the scoreline too. Their recruitment strategy noticeably shifts. By year 3, Madrid have won back-to-back league titles, added another Champions League trophy to the cabinet, and Haaland's name is being mentioned in the same breath as the greatest strikers to ever wear the shirt. Individual awards tell their own version of this story, and this is where the alternate timeline really starts to separate from reality. Haaland finished as runner-up for the Ballon d'Or in 2023. In this version, playing for a club that wins the Champions League in his very first season, that argument disappears entirely. He walks away with the trophy that year, and by year 3, he's collected a second one, something the real version of his career still hasn't managed to do. The numbers back up why voters would have no real choice in the matter. In actual history, Haaland scored 52 goals in his debut Premier League season. Give him the same output translated to a Real Madrid shirt, factor in the extra spotlight of playing in Champions League knockout football deep into May instead of an earlier City exit some seasons, and you're looking at a goal tally and trophy haul. Analysts covering this hypothetical often point to one simple fact: greatness in football is rarely just about talent, and Real Madrid has always been the biggest stage the sport has to offer. Every legendary Madrid number 9 before him, from Ronaldo Nazario to Karim Benzema, built their legacy under a specific kind of pressure that simply doesn't exist anywhere else in football. The Bernabéu doesn't tolerate slow starts or quiet performances in big games, and in this alternate version, Haaland thrives under exactly that pressure rather than being shielded from it. By his third season, pundits stop debating whether he's the best striker in the world. Now let's step back out of the hypothetical. because the real story is just as compelling. Haaland did sign for Manchester City, and what he's actually accomplished there speaks for itself. 52 goals in his debut Premier League campaign. A treble in his very first year at the club, something no English team had ever achieved before. He remains one of the fastest players in history to reach 50. Then 100 goals for a single club, numbers that put him in territory very few strikers in the modern game have ever touched. So why does this alternate version matter at all, if the real Haaland is already rewriting the record books anyway? Because it shows just how thin the line is between the players we celebrate and the players who get away. One phone call, one negotiation that goes slightly differently. That's really what makes transfer history so fascinating to look back on. It's never just about the player. It's about timing, and the moments where one club says yes while another hesitates. So here's the real question worth sitting with. Is there another Haaland-sized decision quietly being made? One that won't make headlines for another 2 or 3 years? And that's where we leave this one. An alternate world where Real Madrid found their next great number 9 2 years early. And Manchester City had to rebuild a plan that was never supposed to fall apart. If you enjoyed walking through this timeline with us, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Let us know down in the comments which scenario you want us to explore next. We read every single one. And if you're new here, subscribe, because there's a lot more of these alternate football histories coming. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.